Welcome back. This is part 2 of Twin Bloodlines, an original story written by me, Will. In part 1, we saw two lives shaped by fate, one forged in war, the other born into blood and power. Now the hunt is no longer distant. Legends clash, loyalties break, and the line between enemy and family begins to blur. This part covers chapters 11 through 20, where everything comes to a head. The fortress, the betrayals, and the truth neither brother was ready to face. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I highly recommend starting there first. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps more than you know. Now, let's continue Twin Bloodlines. Chapter 11, The First Thread. The warehouse reeked of diesel and blood. Bodies of cartel soldiers lay scattered, smoke rising from bullet holes in steel drums. Daniel stood over the last survivor, a mid-level lieutenant named Ortega. The man was pinned against the wall, his leg mangled from a grenade blast, sweat pouring down his pale face. Daniel removed his mask just enough to breathe, but the shadows still hid his features. His voice was steady, calm, terrifying in its lack of emotion. "Where is he?" Ortega shook his head violently. I can't say, you don't understand. El Lobo will skin me alive." Daniel crouched closer, his steel hand clamping around Ortega's throat, just enough to make him feel the pressure. "You think he's worse than me?" Daniel whispered. The lieutenant's eyes bulged. He tried to laugh, but it broke into a sob. Please. Daniel released his throat. "You've got one chance. One. Tell me where he is." Ortega's body trembled. His loyalty was cracking, shattered by the sight of Iron Hand's coldness and the corpses of his friends. He's not here," Ortega stammered. "He moves between safe houses, but I know who knows. Javier, his right hand. He handles the money, the meetings, the shipments. If you find Javier, you'll find El Lobo." Daniel's eyes narrowed behind the mask. Finally, a name, a trail. He stood, towering over Ortega. For a moment, the man thought he might live. Then Daniel's pistol flashed once, silencing him forever. Diego, a brother's shadow. Miles away, Diego sat in his study, unaware that Ortega had broken. He poured himself a glass of expensive whiskey, maps and ledgers spread before him. "El Lobo rules the streets," Javier said confidently from across the room. "Iron Hand can kill foot soldiers, captains, even lieutenants. But he'll never reach the top. He doesn't know the game." Diego smirked, wolfish. "Then we keep playing. And when he tires, when he slips, we cut his throat." But for the first time, the wolf didn't feel invincible. There was something about Iron Hand that felt different, like he wasn't just another soldier, like he was something more, and Diego would soon learn. Iron Hand now had Javier's name. Chapter 12, Fire in the Walls. The night sky over Colombia was silent except for the hum of helicopters and the crunch of boots in wet soil. Daniel's team surrounded the mansion like wolves circling prey. Intel said El Lobo himself could be inside, or at least one of his most guarded strongholds. Tonight could have been the night. Daniel adjusted his mask, voice sharp over comms. "No one in, no one out. Sweep the perimeter. We breach on my mark." Dozens of soldiers moved into position, rifles raised. The mansion loomed in front of them. Tall gates, luxury cars, lights glowing inside. It looked alive. Daniel raised his fist. "Go." The gates blew open. Soldiers stormed in, glass shattered, shouts echoed through the halls, and then, boom, the ground shook. Windows erupted fire, screams filled the comms, one explosion after another chained through the house like a heartbeat of hell. Walls collapsed. The entire mansion was rigged. Daniel was thrown back, ears ringing, vision blurred. When he staggered to his feet, he saw the carnage. Half his team, gone. Torn apart in flames, and in the middle of the smoke he saw Frankie, his brother in arms, his closest friend. The man who had saved his life a dozen times over. Frankie was buried under burning debris, body mangled. Daniel fell to his knees, dragging him out with trembling hands. Frankie coughed once, blood spilling from his lips. His voice was weak, fading. "Danny, keep going." Then nothing. Daniel roared, a sound raw, broken, not human. His mask cracked, as he slammed his metal fist into the ground again and again, trembling with rage. Iron Hand, the soldier who never broke, shattered that night. El Lobo, the wolf's smile, news reached Diego before sunrise. His man poured whiskey into his glass with a grin. The mansion's gone, Jefe. They hit it hard, but the bombs, half their force, wiped out. One of their leaders, dead. Diego leaned back, cigar smoke curling around him. At first, silence, then he laughed, a deep, savage laugh that echoed through the room. Iron Hand bleeds, he shouted, slamming his glass on the table. The invincible soldier, the shadow they whisper about, now he knows what it feels like to lose. His men laughed with him, the room filled with triumph. But when the laughter faded, Diego's smile wavered. He stared at the map pinned to the wall, pins and red lines marking every raid, every hit. They were closing in. Mansion after mansion, convoy after convoy, Iron Hand was cutting closer and closer to the heart. For the first time, El Lobo whispered to himself in the quiet of his office, "They're getting closer." The wolf was still laughing, but deep down he knew the hunter was at his door. Chapter 13, The Weight of Loss. The medevac flight back to base was silent. No victory shouts, no talk of strategy, just the hum of rotors and the smell of blood. Daniel sat in the corner, Frankie's dog tags clutched tight in his steel fist. His mask was gone, his face pale, streaked with soot and blood. Across from him, the surviving soldiers kept their eyes down. Nobody dared speak. When they landed, Daniel didn't join the others in debrief. He walked straight past the command tent, past the mess, past the barracks, until he reached the empty field where the night sky stretched endless above him. He dropped to his knees. For the first time since childhood, Daniel prayed, not for himself, but for the man who had been closer than a brother. Frankie, who had laughed in the darkest days, who had covered Daniel's back in every firefight, who had once told him, "If you fall, I'll drag you home." Daniel had no tears left, only a void where his heart should have been. The funeral was short. A flag, a few words from the commander, the crack of rifles in salute. Soldiers saluted and marched off, but Daniel stayed behind, staring at the coffin as dirt covered it inch by inch. "Rest, brother," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'll finish this. For you." His steel hand clenched so hard it groaned. The breaking point. Back in his quarters, Daniel stared at the wall. Photos of past missions, medals, operations, none of it mattered anymore. He wasn't fighting for country. He wasn't fighting for orders. This was personal now. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Frankie's smile. And then he saw the fire, the mansion exploding. Frankie crushed under burning rubble. The rage grew. Daniel smashed his fist through the wall, concrete crumbling. He paced like a caged animal, breath ragged. His men feared him now. Iron Hand, usually calm and controlled, was unraveling. "Sir," one soldier said carefully from the doorway, "we'll get him, El Lobo. We'll make him pay." Daniel turned, eyes dark and hollow. "No," he said coldly. "I'll make him pay." Meanwhile, the wolf's unease. On the other side of the world, Diego sat at a long mahogany table, feasting with his lieutenants. The wine was fine, the meat tender, the laughter loud. But when the laughter faded and the night grew quiet, Diego sat alone with his glass. The bombs had killed many, but Iron Hand lived. "El Lobo," Javier spoke softly, sensing his jefe's silence. "Why so serious? We dealt him a heavy blow." Diego swirled the wine, staring into the red liquid like it might show the future. "He's not like the others," he murmured. "The more we kill, the angrier he gets. He's not hunting for duty. He's hunting for blood." For the first time, the wolf admitted a truth he never spoke aloud. Iron Hand won't stop. Chapter 14. Rogue Wolf, Hunter. Daniel sat in the command tent as his superior officer, Colonel Reeves, laid out the next objectives. Maps, photos, intelligence reports, all pointing to El Lobo's sprawling empire. "Listen carefully," Reeves barked. "We move carefully. No more reckless assaults, no more heavy losses. Iron Hand, you're too close to this. I'm pulling you from frontline operations until we regroup." The words hit Daniel like a slap. He gripped Frankie's dog tags under the table, jaw clenched. "With respect, sir," Daniel said slowly, voice tight with rage, "we don't have time to regroup. Every day El Lobo slips further away." Reeves glared. "That's an order, soldier." Daniel's eyes went cold. He stood, saluted sharply, and walked out without another word. But inside, the decision was already made. He wouldn't wait. He wouldn't follow. Frankie's blood demanded justice, and Iron Hand would deliver it. The desertion that night, while the base slept. Daniel packed light, his mask, his rifle, combat knife, explosives, and a handful of magazines. He left his insignia folded neatly on his bunk. No more army, no more orders. He slipped past the guards like a shadow, stole a black motorcycle from the motor pool, and vanished into the night. From that moment forward, Daniel Silver was no longer a soldier of any nation. He was a ghost. A hunter. The first strike. 2 nights later, a convoy of El Lobo's trucks rumbled down a dirt road, headlights cutting through the jungle mist. They carried cash and weapons, the veins of Diego's empire. A figure appeared in the road, masked, rifle slung across his back. The driver slammed the brakes, shouting in Spanish. Then came the gunfire. Daniel tore through them like a storm. Precision shots dropped guards one by one, his steel fist crushing through armored doors. By the time the smoke cleared, the convoy was burning. Every survivor was dragged out, one by one. Daniel pressed the muzzle of his pistol against the last man's forehead. "Where is El Lobo?" The man shook his head, stammering, I don't know. He moves too much. Only the inner circle knows." Bang! Daniel holstered his pistol, voice low and grim. "Then I'll keep asking." He vanished into the jungle before reinforcements arrived, leaving nothing but fire and corpses behind. The wolf's ears. Word reached Diego the next morning. His lieutenants gathered in his villa, nervous, whispering. "Jefe," one said cautiously, "it's Iron Hand. He's gone rogue. He's hitting us without backup, without an army. Just him." Diego froze. Just one man? Against convoys guarded by dozens? He forced a laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let him come. Wolves don't fear dogs." But in the pit of his stomach, Diego felt it. Unease. Iron Hand wasn't fighting a war anymore. He was hunting. And Diego was the prey. Chapter 15. The wolf prepares the crusade. The cartel was bleeding. Warehouse after warehouse fell to fire and gunshots. Daniel moved with the patience of a predator and the fury of a storm. He didn't leave survivors unless he wanted answers. Every raid was the same. He kicked in doors, gunfire rattled, bodies dropped. Then came the question, where is El Lobo? The lieutenants gave him scraps, whispers of safe houses, rumors of hidden mansions, fleeting movements across borders, but never the final location. Still, Iron Hand pressed on, each interrogation colder, each kill heavier. The name Iron Hand spread through the underworld like wildfire. To the cartel soldiers, he wasn't a man anymore. He was a shadow that walked in blood. The wolf's armor. Deep inside his mountain stronghold, Diego stood before a mirror. For years he had ruled with charm, fear, and firepower. But the stories coming from his men unsettled him. One man dismantling empires, impossible. And yet, the bodies piled higher every week. So El Lobo did something he had not done in years. He prepared himself. He stripped down and slowly suited up, piece by piece, a thick Kevlar vest, reinforced with steel plates. Stab-proof layers sewn into his jacket. Black gloves and brass knuckles slipped over his fists, gleaming under the dim light. Around his neck, he tied a wolf-emblazoned scarf, his symbol, his reminder. Finally, he picked up his old revolver. Heavy, reliable, with 6 bullets polished like silver. He loaded each one slowly, almost reverently, the cylinder clicking shut. On the table lay a simple MP3 player and a set of battered headphones. Diego pressed play, a Spanish corrido swelling in the empty room. Music for warriors, for wolves. The mask came last, a snarling wolf of black leather covering his face, leaving only his eyes exposed. Eyes that no longer belonged to a man, but a beast ready to fight. The call of blood. As the music filled his ears, Diego shadowboxed, fists thudding into the air. He moved with the precision of a street fighter, raw and violent. He wasn't planning to hide behind armies forever. If Iron Hand wanted him, then Iron Hand would find him, and when that moment came, Diego would not be hiding in fear. He would meet his brother in blood head-on. The Wolf versus the Iron Hand. Chapter 16, The Wolf's Den. Daniel's hands were still slick with blood when the last survivor coughed up the truth. The interrogation had gone on for hours in the burned-out ruins of a cartel safehouse. The man was shaking, broken. His face swollen and cut, but his tongue finally loosened. El Lobo, he doesn't stay in the cities anymore. Too dangerous. He built a fortress in the mountains, guarded day and night. Daniel leaned closer, mask hiding his expression. Where? The man choked, spitting out coordinates, directions through jungle roads, landmarks only locals knew. When Daniel was certain, he pulled back, his steel fist glinting in the firelight. Gracias, Daniel muttered. The pistol cracked once. Silence. The path, for the first time since Frankie's death, Daniel felt something steady inside him. Purpose. The hunt was no longer blind. He finally had a trail leading straight to the wolf's throat. He radioed his old unit, the ones still loyal to him despite his desertion. Some answered. Others didn't. But a few voices came back, hardened soldiers who wanted vengeance as much as he did. Send the coordinates, one voice said. If El Lobo's really there, we'll finish this together. Daniel didn't thank them. He couldn't. This wasn't about gratitude. This was about the end. The stronghold high in the Sierra Madre, El Lobo's fortress loomed, a mansion carved into the cliffs, blending concrete with the bones of the mountain itself. Guard towers lined the ridges, floodlights swept the jungle, helicopter pads, weapon caches, and dozens of trained killers moved like ants across the compound. Inside, Diego stood on the balcony, the MP3 player humming in his ears, revolver at his side. He stared at the jungle below, where mist curled through the trees. Somewhere out there, his enemy was coming. His brother. El Lobo, a lieutenant said nervously. Our men report. Iron Hand's movements are pushing closer. Too close. Diego grinned beneath his wolf mask. Good. Let him come. I built this place to outlast armies. He tapped the brass knuckles against the stone railing, listening to the metallic clink, clink, clink. His blood burned hot with anticipation. Tell the men, the hunt begins now. The unstoppable march, far below, Daniel walked the dirt road with his rifle slung and knife strapped to his chest. His mask hid the grief twisting his face, but his eyes burned with fire. Every step was heavy but steady. He whispered under his breath, almost like a vow. This ends where it began, brother. The Iron Hand was coming for the wolf's den. Chapter 17. The Marksman's Song, revised. The jungle gave way to stone. Iron Hand and his squad moved silently up the mountain path, rifles sweeping the shadows. The fortress loomed above them, its floodlights cutting through the mist like watchful eyes. For a moment, there was only the sound of boots crunching gravel, the soft hum of radios, and Daniel's heartbeat in his ears. Then the silence shattered. Crack! The first shot split the night. One of Daniel's men collapsed, skull snapping back before his body even hit the dirt. Crack, crack. Two more dropped, blood staining the gravel. Daniel froze. That rhythm, a single shot, then a double tap. Clean, cold, merciless. His stomach sank. He'd read about it in dossiers. Every informant whispered the same warning. If you hear the song, one shot, then two, it's too late. That's Javier, El Lobo's ghost, his guardian. Daniel's men scrambled for cover, firing blindly into the cliffs. But deep down, Daniel knew. No ordinary sniper played death like an instrument. This was Javier's song. High on the battlements, Javier lay prone, his scar catching the moonlight. His eye never left the scope as he squeezed the trigger again, keeping the rhythm alive. Bang! Bang, bang. Each shot was surgical. Men dropped before they even realized they'd been marked. By the time the dust settled, Daniel was alone. He stood amidst the bodies of his brothers in arms, their blood soaking the gravel path, rifles lying twisted in the dirt. His chest rose and fell with rage. Frankie was gone. Now the rest were gone too. Above, Javier finally stepped into the open. A shadow against the moonlight, rifle slung over his shoulder. His voice carried through the valley, mocking, "You should have stayed in the shadows, Iron Hand. You know my song, you know what it means." Daniel's fists clenched, his voice a low growl through the mask. "Javier." He looked up at the marksman, hatred boiling in his chest. "I've heard your rhythm in too many graves. Tonight it ends." Chapter 18. Predator and Prey. The jungle was silent again, but the silence carried death. Daniel crouched low, back against a shattered boulder, rifle clutched tight. Smoke from the ambush still curled upward. The corpses of his squad lay scattered in the moonlight. All that was left was him and Javier. Crack! Stone exploded inches from his head, chips cutting into his cheek. Daniel cursed under his breath. He shifted, rolled, pressed his chest into the mud. The rhythm haunted his ears. One shot, then two. The marksman's song. The ghost, above. High on the ridge, Javier moved like a shadow. His sniper rifle whispered death. But when Daniel ducked into cover, he didn't hesitate. He pulled a compact machine gun from his back, spraying the jungle below. Sparks and dust rained around Daniel. "Run, Iron Hand," Javier shouted, voice echoing across the cliffs. "I'll cut you down just like your men. One by one, you can't kill a ghost." Daniel gritted his teeth. His allies were gone. He couldn't waste bullets spraying blindly. Javier had the high ground, the range, the sightlines. But Daniel had something Javier didn't. Patience. The hunt turns. Daniel dropped his rifle, useless at this range, and slipped a knife from his vest. He smeared mud across his mask, across his arms, darkening his body into shadow. Slowly, painfully, he crawled through the undergrowth. Every movement measured, every breath shallow. Crack! Another shot rang, hitting only branches. Javier's rhythm faltered. For the first time, the song missed. Daniel smiled grimly. "Not a ghost," he whispered. "Just a man with a gun." The clash minutes stretched like hours. Then suddenly, silence. Daniel had circled the ridge. He could see Javier now, laying prone, scope sweeping the jungle below. Focused, arrogant. Daniel launched. He burst from the brush, slamming into Javier's side. The sniper spun, surprised, and Daniel's knife slashed across his arm. The rifle clattered to the rocks. Javier roared, swinging his machine gun, but Daniel's steel fist smashed it aside. They tumbled across the ridge, brass knuckles against steel, fists and blades flashing in the moonlight. Death's song ends. Javier spat blood, pulling a revolver from his vest. He aimed for Daniel's head. Click. Empty. Daniel drove his knife forward, burying it deep into Javier's chest. The marksman gasped, choking, his rhythm finally broken. Daniel leaned close, whispering through his mask. No more songs. He twisted the blade, then ripped it free. Javier slumped against the rocks, eyes wide, blood pooling beneath him. The ghost was gone. Daniel stood, chest heaving, face shadowed in moonlight. Below the fortress still loomed, El Lobo waiting in its heart. Daniel wiped the blood from his knife and muttered, "One wolf left." Chapter 19. The Wolf's Den. The fortress felt alive. Daniel crept down its vast halls, boots dragging through glass and dust. Smoke hung heavy, swallowing the chandeliers above. The air smelled of blood, gunpowder, and wealth. A kingdom built on the suffering of others. Every echo set his nerves on fire. His rifle swept left, then right. Behind every shadow, he imagined an ambush. Behind every door, another explosion. His squad was gone. Frankie was gone, and all that was left was him. Iron Hand, the last soldier standing. At the far end of the corridor, black iron doors loomed, carved with snarling wolves. The faint thrum of an old Spanish guitar played through hidden speakers, distorted by static. Each note crawled across Daniel's nerves. He was close, too close. The wolf speaks, then a voice floated through the darkness, calm, measured, dangerous. Iron Hand. Daniel froze, rifle raised. "You've killed many to get here, burned my safe houses, broken my circle. My men whisper your name like a curse, but me?" A pause, the faint sound of a chuckle. "I admire you." Daniel's jaw tightened. He said nothing. The voice continued, closer now, though no footsteps came. "You move like I do, strike like I do, ruthless, precise." Another pause, deeper this time, carrying an edge Daniel couldn't name. "Almost as if I've known you all my life." Daniel's heart thudded once, heavy in his chest. Something about the words clawed at him. Familiarity, recognition. But he forced it down, swallowing the thought like fire. "I'm not here for admiration," he growled. "I'm here to end you." The fortress walls swallowed his reply. The scent of blood. Behind the iron doors, El Lobo leaned forward on his throne, head tilted. He couldn't see Iron Hand yet, but he could feel him, like the air itself had shifted. Like some buried memory clawed its way to the surface. His knuckles tightened against the brass. "Strange," he whispered to himself, almost too quiet for the room to hear. "Why do you feel familiar?" The thought lingered, burning, before he shoved it away and rose to his feet. The threshold. Daniel reached the doors. His reflection stared back at him in the dark metal. A scarred mask, a man carrying too many ghosts. On the other side waited the wolf. He set his hand against the cold surface, whispering under his breath, "This ends tonight." And with a push, the gates to hell opened. Chapter 20. Wolf versus Iron. The throne room was a cathedral of crime. Tall stone pillars reached toward a ceiling, lit by flickering chandeliers. Wolf pelts lined the marble floor, and weapons of every kind decorated the walls, trophies from wars fought in shadows. At the far end, seated in a chair carved from obsidian and steel, was El Lobo. He rose as Iron Hand entered. For a moment, silence ruled the air. Two men stood locked in each other's presence, both legends in their own right. One was a phantom of war, the other a king of the underworld. The wolf tilted his head, eyes narrowing behind his mask. "So, the Iron Hand, the ghost who slaughters my men and burns my empire. At last, you crawl into my den." Daniel's voice came low, steady. "I'm here to finish what I started." A laugh, sharp and cold, echoed across the chamber. "You think you can kill me? You think you can end the wolf? Men greater than you have tried, and their bones now lie in the dirt." Daniel's rifle lifted an inch, his finger brushing the trigger. "I'm not them." And with that, the air snapped. The first clash. Gunfire erupted, deafening inside the stone hall. Iron Hand dove behind a pillar as Lobo's revolver barked fire. Marble shattered. Pelts burned. The chandelier above rattled, sending sparks raining down. Daniel broke cover, returning fire with precise soldier's bursts. El Lobo ducked, rolling across the floor, moving with the feral grace of his namesake. Every motion was calculated, deadly, like a predator circling prey. At last, the distance closed. Daniel's rifle clicked empty, and El Lobo's revolver spun out of his hand in the chaos. Now it was fists. The wolf's fury. El Lobo slammed forward, brass knuckles flashing. Each punch was a hammer, shuddering through Daniel's armor. Daniel caught one, twisted, and drove his knee into Lobo's ribs. The wolf growled, spitting blood, then headbutted him hard enough to crack the mask's frame. They grappled, throwing each other against the walls, smashing through tables and weapon racks. Every blow echoed with rage years in the making. Two lives shaped by violence, colliding at last. A familiar shadow. For a flicker of a second, El Lobo hesitated. The way Iron Hand moved, the footwork, the way his punches drove from the shoulder, not the elbow, it stirred something buried deep in him. A memory of fists he'd once seen long ago. A memory he shouldn't even have. His brass knuckles froze mid-swing, his breath hitched. Why does this man feel familiar? But then Daniel surged forward, smashing a hook into his jaw, and the thought burned away in fire and fury. The throne room shook with violence. Two predators, blind to the truth, locked in a war neither could walk away from, and neither knew that blood, the same blood, ran in their veins. Chapter 20. Wolf versus Iron continued. The throne room was wreckage now. Smoke, shattered glass, broken furniture scattered like bones. Iron Hand's breathing turned harsh, each exhale fogging the cracked mask that still clung to his face. He fought like a machine built for war, every strike driven by rage and precision. His fists pounded like hammers, elbows and knees crashing into El Lobo's ribs, jaw and throat. But El Lobo, he didn't fight fair. He never had. Dirty swords he wore, Lobo staggered back, spitting blood. His hand shot out, snatching a broken bottle from the ground. Without hesitation, he drove it forward in a jagged stab. Daniel twisted, but the glass carved across his forearm, slicing deep through flesh. Daniel roared, the wound fueling him. He slammed a boot into Lobo's chest, sending him crashing into the weapons rack. The wolf came up with the hatchet in hand. He swung wild, furious, the blade whistling through the air. Daniel caught his wrist, wrenched hard, and the hatchet flew, but Lobo's knee rocketed up into his gut. Daniel folded, air rushing from his lungs, and Lobo smashed his brass knuckles into the side of his mask, cracking it further, iron and blood. Daniel's soldier instincts roared to life. He didn't hesitate. Grabbing the wolf by the collar, he drove him headfirst into a marble pillar. The impact shook dust loose from the ceiling. El Lobo laughed through the blood dripping from his nose. "You hit hard, soldier, but I hit dirty." He grabbed a shard of glass from the floor and jammed it upward into Daniel's side. The soldier bellowed in pain, retaliating with a savage headbutt that split Lobo's brow wide open. Blood poured down his mask, but still the wolf grinned, teeth red. To two beasts. There was no elegance now, only raw survival. Daniel tackled him into the throne, splintering it in half. He rained fists down, knuckles cracking against the wolf's skull. But Lobo clawed back, raking at Daniel's face, gouging for his eyes, even biting at his shoulder like a starved animal. Every second was war. Every strike shook the chamber. For a moment, both men broke apart, staggering to their feet, gasping for air. Daniel's chest heaved beneath his scarred armor. Lobo swayed, blood dripping down his mask, brass knuckles dented, glass still clenched in one hand. They glared at each other, two beasts standing in ruins. And somewhere, deep in the wolf's chest, a strange tug pulled again. Something about this soldier's face, his movements, his fire. It burned with familiarity he could not yet name. But he shook it off, raising the shard and growling through broken teeth. "This ends with your corpse feeding my dogs." Chapter 20. Wolf vs. Iron. Conclusion. The throne room looked like a battlefield. Pillars cracked, glass and blood smeared across the marble, the throne itself split in half. Iron Hand and El Lobo clashed again, fists hammering, weapons forgotten. Daniel drove a punch so hard into Lobo's jaw that it cracked bone. The wolf stumbled, almost dropping the shard of glass in his hand. With a guttural roar, he slashed upward in desperation. The jagged edge caught Daniel's mask, splitting it down the middle. The soldier froze for a heartbeat. Then the mask fell away, clattering against the floor. El Lobo's eyes widened. His bloody grin faltered. He staggered back a step, staring as though he had seen a ghost. That face, those eyes, memories long buried, clawed their way back. His mother's whispered words in a cramped shack, telling him of the brother he'd never known. A baby taken away before he could speak his first word. "No," he whispered, breath catching. His voice cracked beneath the growl. "It can't be. Hermano?" Daniel stood rigid, chest heaving, confusion and fury warring on his face. His fists trembled at his sides. His parents' stories, the ones about the child they lost, came flooding back. He stared at the bloodied wolf before him, and for the first time, his soldier's rage cracked into disbelief. "A brother!" The room went silent. The battle, the blood, the vendetta, the years of hatred paused on that razor edge of revelation. Chapter 21. Blood knows blood. The word hung in the air like smoke. "Brother?" Daniel's chest heaved, eyes locked on the blood-soaked man before him. His fists, still trembling, clenched tighter. His mind screamed that this couldn't be true, that the monster who had burned cities, who had slaughtered innocents, who had taken Frankie's life, couldn't be his own flesh and blood. But the memories of his parents' whispers, they wouldn't leave him. El Lobo's breath rattled in his chest. His grip tightened on the glass shard until his hand bled. For years, he had clawed his way out of the gutter, alone. Hated, feared. He told himself he had no family, but now the soldier standing across from him bore the same fire in his eyes. The truth was undeniable and unbearable. "Doesn't matter," Lobo spat, his voice low, trembling with rage. "Brother or not, you came for my throne, and I'll kill anyone who does." Daniel's jaw clenched. He raised his fists again, voice raw. "You're no brother of mine." The silence shattered as they lunged. No hesitation, no mercy. Fists met flesh, blood sprayed. Lobo fought like a cornered animal, smashing Daniel with headbutts, claws, teeth, anything he could use. Daniel answered with soldier's brutality, elbows cracking ribs, boots stomping bone. Now it wasn't just war, it was personal. Chapter 21, Blood Knows Blood, continued. The clash of fists wasn't enough. Both men were battered, bleeding, and still standing. But this war wasn't just theirs anymore. Iron Hand spat blood, yanked his comm from his belt, and barked into it with a voice like thunder. "Redeer, mark my coordinates. Full squad, full strike. I want every gun we have on this fortress." Across the battered comms, Redeer's voice crackled back, steady as ever. "Copy. Whole teams inbound. We're bringing hell with us." Diego, El Lobo, snarled through a split lip. He snatched a blood-smeared radio off the ground, his voice echoing through every frequency of his empire. "This is Lobo. Iron Hand is in the fortress. 5 million to the man who brings me his head. And my throne goes to the one who kills him." The effect was instant. All across the city, in hidden bars, slums and barracks, men and women froze as the call went out. Missionaries, mercenaries, cartel guns, ex-soldiers, all of them heard the wolf's bounty. Greed lit their eyes like fire. Now they were coming. The first wave hit like a storm. Iron Hand's reinforcements crashed through the shattered gates, exchanging gunfire with Lobo's legions pouring in from underground tunnels, rooftops, and hidden passages. The fortress shook with explosions. The walls cracked under the roar of machine guns. Men screamed as grenades lit the hallways, and in the middle of it all, the brothers tore into each other. The glass was gone. Now knives flashed, revolvers barked, chains whipped. El Lobo swung with a brass knuckle. Daniel countered with a blade ripped from a fallen merc's hand. Their duel moved through fire and chaos, every strike sharper, every wound deeper. Around them, armies bled for two men who could not stop. Chapter 22, The Siege of Wolves. The fortress was no longer stone and steel. It was a battlefield. Iron Hand's coordinates had been broadcast to the skies, and Redeer's men answered with fury. Blackhawks thundered overhead, repelling soldiers crashing down through shattered skylights. Armored convoys slammed against the gates, guns blazing, tearing holes into the walls. But Diego's call had lit the underworld on fire. Mercenaries, cartel legions, ex-soldiers drunk on greed poured in from every direction. Trucks barreled up the mountainside, motorcycles screamed through the courtyard, RPGs streaked against the night sky. The fortress groaned under the storm. Inside, the grand halls became kill zones. Iron Hand's squad stacked on doors, clearing rooms with precision, only to be met with mines, ambushes, and waves of mercs crashing like tides. "Move, move!" Redeer shouted, dragging a wounded comrade to cover as bullets stitched the walls. Frankie's old unit, still burning for vengeance, carved through hallways with shotgun blasts and grenades. But for every man they cut down, two more seemed to rise. The missionaries, El Lobo's most loyal zealots, fought like fanatics. They rushed into gunfire without fear, chanting the wolf's name, trading their lives for every inch. The air was smoke and blood. Grenades rattled the ceilings, machine guns chewed through bodies, and the fortress began to crumble under the weight of the battle. Above it all, two voices cut through the chaos. Iron Hand's bark. "Push forward! Don't stop until we find him!" El Lobo's roar over the fortress speakers. "Bleed them! Break them! Whoever brings me Iron Hand's corpse will sit on my throne." And the soldiers obeyed. The night became an endless war. Soldiers against mercenaries, fanatics against trained killers, greed against vengeance. And through it, Daniel and Diego hunted each other. Their duel waiting, burning, inevitable. Chapter 23, The Wolf and the Iron. The fortress shook as if the earth itself wanted the battle to end. Explosions rattled the walls, gunfire echoed through the halls, and men screamed and died by the dozens. But inside the shattered throne room, the world narrowed to two. Iron Hand and El Lobo circled each other, blood running down their faces, weapons scattered, lungs burning. Neither man had ever been pushed this far. Daniel grinned through split lips, forcing out a hoarse laugh. "You know something, Wolf? Nobody's ever pushed me this hard. Nobody's ever dragged me to the edge like this. Maybe—" He spat blood, chuckling darkly. "Maybe we're brothers." Diego's chest heaved. For a moment his eyes softened, the weight of those words sinking deeper than he wanted them to. Then he smirked, a bitter, broken smile. Maybe, but you know what, Iron Hand? Brothers don't both walk away. Only one of us leaves this room. Their gazes locked. The gunfire outside faded for a moment, drowned out by the storm inside their veins. Daniel tightened his fists. Diego flexed his brass knuckles. The air between them crackled with violence and unspoken truth. They both knew it. Whether by blood or by war, this was destiny. Only one man would walk out of the wolf's den. Or maybe, neither would. Chapter 24. The fortress burns. The throne room door slammed shut behind them, muffling the clash of fists and steel within. Outside, the fortress was chaos incarnate. Iron Hand's reinforcements pushed through the wreckage, carving paths of blood through the hallways. Reedier's commandos fought with precision, sweeping room by room, dragging wounded men to safety while holding the line against the endless tide. But El Lobo's mercenaries were rabid. Fueled by greed and the promise of a throne, they threw themselves into the storm without fear. RPGs tore chunks out of the walls, snipers on the balconies rained down death. The missionaries screamed prayers as they charged headlong into gunfire, bodies falling in heaps yet never stopping. It was no longer a battle. It was slaughter. Frankie's old brothers-in-arms roared as they avenged him, stacking bodies in the courtyard with flamethrowers and mounted guns. But for every merc killed, 2 more spilled through the shattered gates. The fortress itself was breaking. Fire licked up the walls, chandeliers crashed down in showers of sparks, the mountain echoed with thunder as both armies bled into the night. And in the heart of it all, the legend of Iron Hand clashed with the myth of El Lobo, their duel hidden away, the outcome unknown. Men fought and died outside that throne room, never knowing that the 2 monsters driving this war might already be tearing each other apart within. The fortress burned, but the true fire was still inside. Chapter 25. Blood Brothers. The throne room was hell. Smoke from burning drapes choked the air, broken glass crunched beneath their boots. El Lobo staggered to a table, his brass knuckles slick with blood. His hand closed around an old assault rifle propped against the wall. He swung it up with a roar and pulled the trigger point blank. Bang! The bullet slammed into Daniel's side, tearing through his liver. His body buckled. Blood poured hot and fast down his uniform. He dropped to one knee, gasping, his vision swimming. But Iron Hand wasn't finished. Not yet. With one last surge, Daniel lunged forward. His knife flashed in the firelight, burying itself deep into Diego's side. The liver, too, he twisted, pulling the blade free with a sickening tear. Both men collapsed, side by side, leaving crimson trails across the marble floor. The rifle clattered away. The knife slipped from Daniel's hand. For a moment there was only silence. The battle outside faded into distant thunder. Diego coughed, blood staining his lips, his chest heaving. "You fight like the devil himself." Daniel gave a broken laugh, clutching his wound. "And you fight like a wolf cornered." They lay there, both staring at the ceiling, firelight dancing above them. "You ever think about it?" Diego rasped. "How life could have been. If we didn't end up here. If we'd gotten a chance at something better." Daniel turned his head, his eyes heavy. "Every day. But I was built for this, nothing else." A long pause. Their ragged breathing was the only sound. Then Diego whispered, almost to himself, "Sometimes I feel like I had a brother out there, somewhere. I don't know why. Just felt it." Daniel's eyes widened, but he didn't speak. His chest rose and fell, blood soaking into the stone beneath him. 2 killers, 2 legends, 2 men bound by fate, bleeding out together in the wolf's den. Epilogue. The wolf still breathes. The world said El Lobo was dead. Governments confirmed it. Cartels collapsed because of it. The fortress was reduced to ash, and the body pulled from the rubble was burned, buried, and labeled confirmed kill. But Daniel never believed it. He lay awake in the military hospital, staring at the ceiling, the dull ache in his liver reminding him he should have died too. The doctors called it a miracle. His squad called it proof that Iron Hand couldn't be killed. Daniel called it wrong, because if he lived, then so could the wolf. Every report felt too clean, too final. El Lobo wasn't a man who died clean deaths. He was a shadow, a survivor, someone who slipped through fire and blood. Daniel remembered the way Diego had fought, not desperate, not afraid, almost accepting, like a man who knew the world would keep turning without him in sight. They never found a face worth remembering, just a body burned beyond recognition. Daniel stood weeks later at the edge of a runway, medals offered, praises spoken, cameras flashing. Iron Hand, the hero who killed El Lobo, he didn't accept the medal, because somewhere, deep in his chest, a certainty burned colder than fear. If I survived, then he did too. At night, Daniel dreamed of laughter echoing through smoke, of eyes watching from the dark, of a wolf that knew how to disappear. El Lobo wasn't dead, he was waiting. And Iron Hand knew one truth the world didn't. Their story wasn't over yet. And that brings us to the end of Twin Bloodlines. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you, seriously. I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so let me know your feedback in the comments below. What did you like? What hit the hardest? I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you want to see more original stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. It helps the channel a lot. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.